Carving demonstration. Permanent mandibular left central incisor. 1.5-inch wax block is used for carving this tooth. From one end of the wax block, measure approximately 9 mm using the metal scale and mark it using the wax carver. And then draw lines parallel to the edge of the block on all the four surfaces exactly at the same measurement. This line corresponds to the cervical line of the tooth. The 9 mm part of the wax block is used for carving the crown part of the tooth, and the remaining part is used for carving the root. After demarcating the crown and the root, the individual surfaces are labeled on the root part of the wax block. This is the labial view, mesial view, lingual view, and the distal view. For carving the labial and the lingual surface, draw the labial and the lingual outlines of the crown on the mesial side of the crown part. Similarly, draw the labial and the lingual outlines on the distal side. The labial outline should be convex in the middle and also in the cervical third, and it should be flat in the incisal third level. The lingual outline should be convex in the cervical third, which denotes the cingulum, and concave in the middle and the incisal third, denoting the fossa. That is, it should have an S-shaped outline. Now the labial surface is carved by slowly removing the wax on the labial aspect in the middle and the incisal third, and thereby creating a smooth flat labial surface. Now, following the labial outline drawn on the proximal sides, the labial convexity in the cervical third is created by removing wax near the cervical line. When carving the labial surface, it should be noted that the labial surface should be lingually inclined. Then, the lingual surface is carved. This is done by removing wax on the lingual aspect in the middle and the incisal third levels. The wax in this area should be removed more to create a concavity in the middle and the incisal third, which will correspond to the lingual fossa. Now, by following the lingual outline drawn on the proximal sides, the lingual convexity in the cervical third is created by removing the wax near the cervical line. This lingual convexity corresponds to the cingulum and should be smoothened and made prominent by deepening the concavity in the middle and the incisal third levels. This is the mesial aspect showing the carved labial and the lingual outlines of the crown. This is the distal aspect showing the carved labial and lingual outlines of the crown. Next, draw the proximal outlines on the labial and the lingual aspect of the crown. On the labial surface, draw the proximal outline starting from the mesio-incisal and the disto-incisal edge up to the cervical line to about 0.5 mm short of the edge of the block. Similarly, on the lingual surface, draw the proximal outline starting from the mesio-incisal and the disto-incisal edge up to the cervical line to about 1 mm short of the edge of the block. This 0.5 mm difference between the labial and the lingual surface corresponds to the lingual convergence of the crown. This is the labial and the lingual aspect showing the proximal outlines. Now, carve the proximal aspect by slowly removing the wax on the mesial surface, starting from the mesiolabial edge and moving towards the mesiolingual edge. Next, the distal surface is carved by slowly removing the wax starting from the distolabial edge and moving towards the distolingual edge. The carving of this proximal aspect is otherwise called as the proximal reduction, and this should follow the mesial and distal outlines drawn on the labial and the lingual aspect. This shows the labial view with the carved proximal surfaces. From the incisal edge of the wax block, measure about 21.5 mm using the metal scale and mark it using the wax carver, and then draw lines on all the four surfaces exactly at the same measurement. This line corresponds to the apex of the tooth. This is the labial aspect showing the marked measurement of the tooth. Now, remove the excess wax exactly at the marked end of the line, which will correspond to the apex. Next, draw the mesial and distal outlines of the root on the labial aspect of the root part. Similarly, the mesial and distal outlines of the root is drawn on the lingual aspect of the root part. But this outline should be 0.5 mm less than the labial aspect. This 0.5 mm difference corresponds to the lingual convergence of the root. This is the labial and the lingual aspects showing the proximal root outlines. Now, the proximal surface of the root is carved by slowly removing the wax from the cervical line up to the apical end. This is how a completed proximal root outline should be on one side. Then the other proximal surface of the root is carved in a similar way by slowly removing the wax from the cervical line up to the apical end. While carving the proximal outline of the root, the carving should follow the outlines drawn previously on the labial and the lingual aspects. This is the labial showing the carved proximal outlines of the root. Now draw the labial and the lingual outline of the root on the distal aspect of the root part. Similarly, the labial and the lingual outline of the root is drawn on the mesial aspect of the root part. This is the mesial and the distal aspects showing the labial and the lingual outlines of the root. Now the labial surface of the root is carved by slowly removing wax from the cervical line up to the apical end. This is the mesial showing the carved labial and lingual outlines of the root. Now the cervical line is drawn on the labial, distal, lingual and the mesial aspects. This is how the cervical line should be drawn on all the different aspects of the carved tooth. Then the cervical constriction is carved by slowly removing the wax from the crown towards the marked cervical line. This is done on all the surfaces of the carved tooth. This is the labial, mesial, lingual and distal aspects showing the partly carved cervical constriction. Next, the cervical constriction is carved by slowly removing the wax from the root towards the marked cervical line. This is also done on all the surfaces of the carved tooth. After carving the cervical constriction, the root part should be smoothened to remove any excess elevations. This is the labial, mesial, lingual and distal aspect showing the carved cervical constriction. Next, in the lingual surface of the carved crown part of the tooth, the U-shaped lingual outline is drawn. This is the lingual outline of the lingual surface of the crown. The center of this U outline corresponds to the lingual fossa and the proximal sides corresponds to the mesial and distal marginal ridges. Now the lingual fossa is carved by slowly removing the wax from the fossa area. By using the scooped end of the wax carver, the lingual fossa is carved accurately below the cingulum area. After carving the fossa, the marginal ridges and the cingulum are rounded so that it merges with the fossa. This is the carved lingual surface of the crown. Next, the mesial and the distal surface should be smoothened. The carved tooth should be checked for any discrepancies in the dimensions and the excess wax should be removed in the crown as well as the root part. Next, the distal curvature of the root is carved in the apical third by removing the wax in the apical third. Then the root apex is rounded on all the sides. This is the completed labial aspect, mesial aspect, lingual aspect, distal aspect. Preliminary polishing is done using the rough polishing cloth by rubbing gently on all the surfaces of the carved tooth. Then the yellow polishing cloth is used for polishing. This is also done by rubbing gently on all the surfaces of the carved tooth. While using the polishing cloths, forceful rubbing should be avoided to prevent any changes in the contour of the carved tooth. Then, the final polishing is done using either a cotton or a tissue paper dipped in soap water. After polishing in soap water, the carved tooth is dried using a tissue paper. This is the final labial aspect, mesial aspect, lingual aspect, distal aspect and incisal aspect of permanent mandibular left central incisor. This shows the different stages of tooth carving up to the completed tooth.